I think it's episode 11, right? Just break the title here of the Kings. Hey everybody, it's John Barrows with J Barrows Consulting on Make It Happen Mondays. Thanks for joining me. Today's session actually is going to be about how to get engaged with executives. It's pretty much right up my alley as far as what I train, but we put out a post a little while ago about, people asking, hey, what do you want to talk about? And this was one of the feedbacks that we got. So I figured I'll do some training today, also talk about a few things of where I'm seeing the industry going. And just make sure. And and just, I don't know, try to drop some knowledge. I mean, things are changing real fast right now, and I'm watching it change. I'm watching myself become irrelevant with some of the training that I'm doing these days. So I want to kind of call that out. But before we did any of that, I just wanted to stop and recognize here, today's Patriots Day. Here in Boston, that's kind of a special day. It's Marathon Monday, which is great. But it gives me a chance to reflect a little bit here. I was actually, the Boston bombing and all that other stuff. And, I was actually coming out of a Red Sox game right when I was about to go down to the finish line because that's what happens if you're not from Boston. What happens is the Red Sox are playing, the marathon's happening. When the Red Sox game comes out, everybody kind of walks over to the finish line right there. And I was going to do that. I remember when I was, I forget how many years ago it was, but I don't know, 5 years ago at this point. And I remember walking down. It was a gorgeous day, and I was by myself. I was like, you know what? I haven't been down to the marathon for a while. Let me go check it out. But then I paused, and I had just had my daughter, and I remember I wanted to be home with her instead. And so my gut says, you know what? I'd much rather be home with my daughter. So I went home instead. And then when I got on the T, actually on the subway, it stopped, and I felt a rumble. And it was right under where the bombs went off, and we had no idea what it was. And then when I got out, obviously took off, got home, and kissed my daughter. So the reason today is special for a lot of reasons, but it's just also just to reflect on things and realize how good we got it. I always say that no matter how bad you got it, it can't be that bad. No matter how bad my day goes. That's why I watch the news. Unfortunately, I watch the news every once in a while just to remind myself, no matter how bad my day goes, it ain't that bad. So we just all got to be thankful for what we got these days, right? So I wanted to just start off with that for everybody out there who's thinks they're going through a hard time or something like that. Just put things in perspective every once in a while. And obviously some of us are, and things suck, and we got to pause and reflect on that as well. But bigger picture wise, a lot of us are doing pretty good these days. So needless to say, with that, I wanted to kind of kick things off with again, how to get in touch with executives. My training is always been focused on engagement with executives. And I mean that at the highest levels. I've always been a top-down seller. We're going after the CEO, CFO, something like that. And having a message that gets their attention doesn't necessarily sell to them and say, hey, I want to sell you on something, but gets their attention, says something relevant enough, and then asks for the referral down, right? And, I've always been a proponent of customized and be thoughtful with your approach and all that other stuff. But, what's happening now with all the artificial intelligence, I mean, there's some tools that I'm playing around with right now that are literally writing emails better than I can, for crying out loud. And these are, artificial intelligence tools that are creating messaging that if you read it, you'd be like, there's no way a human didn't write this, but they are. Now, I think that's a little bit far away from, but not too far away, maybe a year or two out, where you're going to start seeing mass personalization by artificial intelligence, right? And right now, just the noise is deafening, right? The emails, content marketing engines, sales reps blasting out template emails. So customization, as much as I still believe in it, and I still believe in you have to have a very thoughtful contact strategy as it relates, we got to keep evolving and doing something different right now, because even those customization, one-off, two-off emails aren't really getting the responses these days. So what I've morphed to as it relates to specifically getting in touch with executives and those target accounts that we really want to go after is really more about telling a story, really sitting down and thinking through what your story is to that target account, right? Where, if you're following account-based marketing, account-based selling, or anything like that, just everything starts with that ideal customer profile. What does that customer look like? And again, I always recommend everybody really figure out what that is. And I don't mean just from an, industry and number of employees standpoint. I mean the nuances there about, what really makes them a great client or prospect for you. What kind of technologies do they currently use? Who's the competition in there? What market do they service? All these different little nuanced things, so we can really hone in on that core group that we really want as clients. And then once you find those, then it's about really circling the wagons and being almost everywhere. Right? I mean, it's funny, my analogy here, I wrote a blog post on this a while ago, because people ask me, John, is it email? Is it in-mail? Is it voice? Is it calls? Is it social? What is it these days to get in touch with somebody? And the answer isn't any one of those things. The answer is all of those things. And my brief analogy on this one is if you ever seen the movie Focus with Will Smith, it's not one of his better ones, but it actually drives home a decent point here. So partway through the movie, so Will Smith's kind of like a guy who hustles people, right? And he's a con artist, and he goes into situations like the Super Bowl or something like that with a group of people, and they swindle all sorts of people. So they pickpocket them, they play games on whatever it is, and they take all their money, right? And so what they do is they take all their money, they get together, and they say, okay, everybody, great job. We'll see you in a couple of weeks at whatever the next event is. So they do this, they collect all this money, and they make $1 million. And they say, all right, good job, everybody. We'll see you in a couple of weeks. And they give the suitcase to Will. They say, Will, please don't go gamble this away. Just we'll see you in a couple of weeks with this. And he's like, yeah, no problem. So because they know he's a degenerate gambler, right? So he leaves with his girl who's part of this, but she doesn't know what's about to happen. And next scene, they're at the Super Bowl in a suite. And they just start betting on random stuff, right? They're like, hey, I'll bet you $50. It wasn't even a bet. Like, it was like, hey, I'll bet you this guy eats his hot dog before she eats her, popcorn or something like that. And they're betting stupid stuff, but within the air distance of this guy. And this guy kind of leans in eventually and says, hey, can I get on the bet? Right? And Will's like, yeah, sure. So he starts turning his attention to him. And they start betting on random stuff. He's like, hey, I bet you $50 this is going to be a running play, right? And so Will loses. He's like, crap, double or nothing. This is going to be an end around to the tight end, that type of thing. Loses again, right? So long story short, doubles, loses the $1 million, right? So he's all dejected. His girl's freaking out. They just lost all this money. That guy's psyched because he took it all. And on his way out, Will turns around and he's like, you know what? I got one more bet for you. He goes, and the guy's like, man, what do you, he's like, you're a glutton for punishment here. What do you want? And he goes, I'll let you choose any number you want on the field. And I'll bet you I'll guess what number you choose. The guy's like, what? He's like, there's 2 football teams down there. Are you out of your mind? You're going to guess what number? He's like, Will's like, I'll do you one better. I'll let my girl guess what number. And she's like, no, absolutely not. She wants nothing to do with it because she doesn't know what's going on. The guy's like, all right, fine. So he grabs the binoculars and he's looking around. And standing next to the coach is this big guy with 55 across his chest. All right. So he looks at Will and he goes, hey, you want me to write it down? Will's like, no, I trust you. He's like, all right. So he gives the binoculars to the girl and she's like, please don't make me do this, please, right? And so she's looking around. Will's like, just look. And she's looking, sweating it. And all of a sudden she sees down, standing next to the coach, their friend who they'd been hanging out with all week with the number 55 across his chest. And so she looks at Will, he looks at her and kind of shrugs and she goes, 55? And the guy's like, no way did you guess that? Like, blows his mind that she picked the number, right? And, they double up and they're all happy whenever they leave. And the point of that is the guy was a mark and Will knew it. He was a degenerate gambler and he was a billionaire. So $1 million to this guy meant nothing. And so Will had it so that when this guy landed in New Orleans, which is where the Super Bowl was, everywhere he looked, he saw 55. So, the license plate on the car that picked him up was 55. The protesters that were standing outside his hotel were Union 55. The chandeliers in his hotel room looked like 5s. The song that was playing in the suite during the Super Bowl was the Rolling Stones, Woo Woo, and apparently in Mandarin, Woo Woo was 5-5. So everywhere this guy looked and everywhere he saw and everywhere he heard, he saw 55. And that's my point. So by the time he was ready to pick his number, by the way, that was the number he was going to pick. And that's where I think we need to be from a sales standpoint these days. I'm going to retweet you I'm going to follow you on Twitter and retweet you every once in a while. I'm going to join a LinkedIn group you're on and comment on a quote or, a question that you had. I'm going to send you an email. I'm going to send you an email. I'm going to make a phone call. I'm going to leave a voicemail. I'm going to retweet you. So everywhere you look, you see 55. 55 just happens to be me. right? And so that whole idea of, I do firmly believe, and I've said this before, I firmly believe that our job is not, it's not to educate our clients on the speeds and feeds and features and functions of our solutions these days, okay? It's our job to get our clients to think, just think differently. Because the more you can get people to think differently, it's kind of, again, it's kind of like the movie Inception, right? It's like you plant that seed and you let it grow and make it their idea. If you do that, I think the stats are something ridiculous, but like if you're the first one to get somebody to think about, doing something different or whatever it is and engage in the sales process that way, I think the stats are something like 70 something percent. If they make a decision, 70% of the time it goes with the person that got there the first, got them to think the first time. And so that's really what I want to be doing right now is I want to follow you. I want to kind of socially stalk you on all the right ways, not always trying to sell you on something, but trying to share information, trying to get you to think, trying to answer questions for you. And so that eventually when you say, hey, you know what, this is something I need, I'm going to be the one that you come to. And so as it relates to contact strategies right now, again, it's not about that one email. It's not about that one voicemail. It's about the contact strategy, right? And that no longer is just email and calls. Now that's email, social, call, all these different tools so that we can surround these people and do it in a thoughtful way. And so that's really where, the message is coming from today is once you identify that account that you really want to get into, do your homework on them, come up with a thought process around why they should pay attention to you and a story to tell. You guys take a look at, I sent out a blog post a while ago called Finally a Contact Strategy I Can Appreciate. All right. And what it was six emails that this guy sent me. And you could tell that they weren't tailored to me. Like he did not go on my website. He did not go on my LinkedIn profile, but they profiled me really, really well. Like, yeah, I was a sales training company and I did sales training. Right. And so every message spoke to a different, challenge that I had, a different priority of mine, those type of things. And he dripped it out in a way that got me after the fourth or fifth time, I started paying attention. And then finally I reached back out. I was like, all right, fine. You know what? You caught me with this, right? Because he did get me to think. Like one of the things he mentioned is, have you ever thought of training as a process? No, fundamentally I know what that means, but I never really kind of put that phrase to it. And so it got me thinking. I was like, all right, let's have this conversation. And so if you want, I know there was a couple of people who had emailed me earlier about, John, hey, I'm looking for a job right now. It's the same thing with looking for a job versus looking for a client. You have to identify that company that you want to work for. Don't just go submit your resumes because they're a cool company. Why do you want to work for that company? Right? What about them, about their mission, about their vision, about their marketplace, something like that? You got to show me that you actually want to work for my company. Submitting resumes through an online form these days is, I couldn't think of a bigger waste of time. I have people come to me, John, I've submitted 50 resumes and I haven't gotten one callback. It's like, no shit. You just got 7,000 other people. You just got put in a pile. The likelihood of you standing out from that pile is slim to none. The way that you stand out if you want to get a job is you actually, I would personally go after the CEO. What I would do is I would look at a mission statement. I would say, okay, what does this company stand for? What are they doing? What's their projection? What are they trying to do? And then come up with my story to that CEO and say, hey, you know what? I've been following you guys for a while now. Notice that your mission is to do this. I'm looking for a company to take the next step of my career with. And, I align very directly with what your mission is. I'd love to have that conversation with you. Who can I, talk to about an opportunity at your organization? And then, if that CEO spoke at an event or something like that, hey, I noticed your recent speaking engagement, whatever it is. But if you tell your story, right? And, 5, 6, 7 touches, whatever the number is, I don't really care. Just make sure it's more than one. And make sure it consists of like saying something new every single time. So you're not saying the same thing over and over and over again. All right. But if you tell that story and you sit down and you kind of think through your story, that's the other key here is don't just like send an email to somebody and then schedule another activity to follow up in a couple days or whatever it is. And then try to think through again what you want to say at that point. Because now your story's like you're trying to make a connection here and it's usually not going to connect. And so what I do is I take 2 hours once a month, the first business day of every month, and I pick 5 accounts that I really want to get into. And I do all my homework on them all at the same time. And I come up with 5, 6, 7 different things to say to each one of them. And I actually implement that contact strategy all right there. So, because if I told you to look for one or two things, say I would say, okay, go do research on somebody and find something to say, right? what you're going to do is you're going to go look, you're going to go and you're going to disregard all the stuff that you don't think is good enough. You're going to be like, that's not good enough. That's not good enough. There's something good to say, right? There's something. And then you're going to spend a half an hour, whatever it is, to write this, Mona Lisa looking email and fire it off. After that takes like a half hour or so sometimes. And then you schedule another activity about, 3 or 4 days later. And now all of a sudden you're like, when that activity comes up, you're probably already 60 to 70 activities past due. You probably got a million other things on your plate, whatever it is. And so now to spend more time sitting down and doing research and finding another reason to reach out to somebody that can make some sort of connection to the one that you just sent out, probably not high. So what we end up doing is we end up saying, did you get my first email? Bubbling this one up to the top or something stupid like that. But if I were to tell you, hey, look at all your, go down and sit down and look at your accounts or your contact or whoever you want to reach out to, and look for 5, 6, 7 different things to say to them, I bet you can find 5, 6, 7 different things, right? And again, they might not all be perfect, but they're good enough. And then again, you can tell your story. You can say, okay, what's my first touch, second touch, third touch, fourth touch? Assuming that your first touch isn't going to work, right? I mean, my expectation is my first email to somebody is not going to get a response. It's more about, I think the stats are always, it takes 5 touches, 10 to whatever the number is. It's almost always on the latter half when people tend to respond. So that's why I almost never make my first email my best one. I usually make my third or fourth one really that strong value proposition, because by that time, hopefully you're paying attention. And if you do it in a condensed manner too, right? It's not, I think 1 touch a week is actually, if you're really going after somebody, is not enough. I think you have to, that's why I do mine 6 touches in 30 days, which ends up being like a Monday, Thursday, Tuesday, Friday, Wednesday, Monday type of thing, right? And by the way, if you don't respond after that, I'm not going to send you the breakup email. Like, it drives me nuts when people send me that breakup emails. Well, this is the last time I'm going to reach out to you. It's like, thanks. And by the way, that's a lie, and you know it. You're going to come back after me when your list is dead anyways, right? So you go, sorry, 2 months later or whatever it is. So why even send that? So I'll come after you 6 times in 30 days. And if you don't respond to that, whatever. I'm going to go after somebody else with your organization and tailor my message up to them. And then I might come back after you maybe 3 to 6 months later, but only if something's changed, right? Something's changed on your end or my end. And so, I think right now, I train on this technique. It's called the Why You Now email technique. And I learned it from Jeff Hoffman, and it worked, man. I got crazy business from it. And I've trained a whole shitload of people on this who have gotten tons of responses from it as well. And it still works if done right, but it's lost a little bit of its value because I don't want to name any names here, but there's some other organizations, other training organizations that take a very similar approach to that Why You Now, right? So the premise of the Why You Now is something about them, right? Some sort of trigger. You open up a new office, you launch a new product, those type of things. And then you tie it to you. So, hey, I saw this happen. The reason I wanted to talk to you because of this, and then who can I talk to about this? And the concept there is you use that, you go after an executive, you get referred down, and you go from there. Problem is, again, there's some marketing tools that have kind of genericized that, but then there's also some training organizations that have, again, I don't want to name any names here, but they've used a very similar format, and now they blast out the C-suite. And the reason I know this is because I was doing a training recently, and I had I'm talking about the top-down approach. I'm in front of like 400 reps up on stage, which I hate to be, but and I'm talking about this top-down approach, and all of a sudden the CEO raises his hand and he says straight up, I'm calling bullshit on the top-down approach. I'm like, oh, crap. Okay. I'm like, come on up here. Let's have a conversation. And he's like, you know what? I get 30 to 40 emails a day from reps saying, hey, this is what I do. Who can we talk to about this? And he's like, I don't respond to any of them. And I'm like, all right, let me ask you. Are all those emails pretty much exactly the same? It's a quick little value prop. It's a generic email effectively with a quick little value proposition, 3 names of clients you do homework, you do business with, and then a call to action, which is who can I talk to about that? Is that pretty much all of them? He's like, yeah, every single one of them. I say, okay, look, if somebody were to actually go on your website, do some homework, make a connection to something you had said or something in your 10K or annual report, and really, be thoughtful about how they might be able to help, that type of thing. Would you respond to that? He's like, well, if it was customized, I would. I was like, okay, well, that's the problem, right? is that these generic emails are going out there and they don't care about conversion ratios. I've actually heard a couple of people who train this stuff. They're like, I don't care about the conversion ratio. If I send 5,000 emails out and get 10 meetings, and you send 50 emails out and get 10 meetings, but I took 10 minutes and you took 2 hours, what's the difference? It's like, mine's better. I'm like, oh God, I couldn't disagree with you more. Because if you send 5,000 emails out to get 5 meetings or 10 meetings, you just pissed off 4,990 people that you're going to have to go back to eventually. And those conversion ratios are going to get worse and worse and worse. So the problem is again, it's been watered down. And, the top down, the other thing with the CEO said that I thought was pretty interesting. He's like, it's pretty obvious, but it's interesting to point out. He's like, it also pisses me off when it's blatantly obvious who the best person is to speak with about this. Right? He's like, I got all this great HR stuff. I got this great HR solution. It's the best HR solution I've ever seen in my life. Who's the best person to speak with about this? He's like, my fucking HR person. Like, don't you use LinkedIn? Like, what are you, an idiot? And so I think that struck home for me, because I think it used to be cool to kind of go after any of the C-suites and say, hey, I got this cool solution. Who can I talk to? But now, if you're not in that thread, if you're selling HR, you can probably go after the CFO. I mean, you can go after the CEO, but only if it's, that your message can resonate to the language a CEO speaks, right? And then I probably wouldn't even ask for who the best person is to speak with about this. I'd actually ask for their time instead of the referral, just to say, hey, I'd like to get your perspective to make sure that this is something that could align with your priorities and what you're trying to accomplish. And then if after that, I can talk to somebody else. So my call to actions tend to say, hey, now with my 6-touch campaign, I tend to go after you. Hey, what's the best way to get some time on your calendar to have this conversation? And then after like the third or fourth one, if you're not responding to that, then I'll say, hey, is there somebody else in your organization that might be a better fit for this? So a couple of nuggets there. And then also on call to action, by the way, I've also loosened up my approach on this, where I used to say it was, you had to ask, be direct with your call to action. Always make sure you know what you want, right? And really, it was either who's the best person to speak with about this, or what's the best way to get some time on your calendar. That was your call. That was my call to action for the past, 10 years, for crying out loud. But I've noticed now that it's not always about asking for somebody's time or asking for them to talk to you. It's about kind of, again, nurturing that and planting that seed. So I think if you come up with your story and you sit there and you can say, okay, you know what, my first email to you is going to be, maybe something I saw that I thought, just a value proposition or something like that, and say, hey, is this worth, sending over some information about, just to see if they bite on that. And then maybe asking a question like, hey, is this something that you have within your organization, or those type of things? And hey, have you seen this? And then maybe, hey, I got a case study here. There's somebody similar to you. Is that worth having a conversation about? When are you free to have that conversation? So, it's kind of like Gary Vaynerchuk's like jab, 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 right hook, right? So like add value, add value, add value, add value, then ask. It's kind of, that's the way I'm looking at contact strategies these days. So needless to say, I know there was, some questions that came in, but some things that came up beforehand about, engaging with executives and those type of things. Really try to, just to summarize this all, just figure out who you're going after and why. I think maybe the top-down approach is a little bit overdone. So I would actually go after the person that you want to talk to at a high level, though, like VP, that type of thing, and really try to engage with a multi-touch contact strategy. All right. See if we're coming up with some questions. I got Connor here. When you're selling to SMBs and there isn't currently information readily available about their company, how do you customize a message to them? Great question, Connor, because I think this hits the quality versus quantity approach, right? I mean, if you are enterprise, and that's when I talk about account-based marketing, account-based selling, really that's only relevant to the enterprise, like when you only have a handful of accounts that you're going after, or maybe mid-market, but big mid-market, right? When you're SMB, I think there's 3 types of contact strategies, okay? There's the fully tailored one, then there's the targeted one, and then there's the templated one. Fully tailored, that's for your tier ones, kind of those select clients that you really want, those 5 a month that I talk about, right? Then the targeted ones, that's where I think, especially from an SMB standpoint, we need to be. I would think more along the lines of if there's not a lot of information, then really think through that persona and think about what their priorities are in that industry and the challenges that they're faced with, and share information out that way. You might not be fully customized, but at least you're targeted to that individual. And Connor, definitely take a look. Go look at my blog post called Finally. Type in Jay Barrows blog, finally a contact strategy I can appreciate, because that is the one that I would highly recommend paying attention to with your contact strategies for the SMB market. Because you're right, there's just not a lot sometimes going on those accounts to look for. But there's always some, like they might have a Facebook page or something like that you could reference. So maybe one or two of those touches could be tailored. But I would think more about, what's the profile, like what are some of the components that make up those ideal customer profiles for them, and then tell your story based on that. But take a look at that finally a content, that blog post I put out there, because that is my belief on how you can do targeted messaging at scale without blasting out a million template shit emails. Okay, so take a look at that one, see what you can find. All right. So about 5 minutes left here. If anybody has any questions, feel free to fire them away. I will say one of the things that if you want to follow me on Snapchat, it's John M as in Michael Barrows, Barrows, all one word. And the reason I throw it out now is because I am actually headed to, this is going to be a crazy week for me. After this, I head to DC tomorrow. Well, tonight I train in DC tomorrow, and then I'm in San Francisco on Wednesday, and then a little bit north of LA on Thursday, and then I take the red eye to New York to head over to VaynerMedia. So Gary V's got this 4D session that he's doing with 12 people, I think 13 total, where it's for companies, because I actually looked into VaynerMedia to do some marketing for me. And the entry point is like something like $500,000, and I'm like, yeah, I'm doing well. I ain't doing that well. So needless to say, I was not going to work with them. But throughout the sales process, they actually gave us some really good insights. And now they came out with this thing for X amount of dollars. I think it's like 10 grand for the day, which seems like a lot, but it's jam packed from like 9 o'clock in the morning to 7 o'clock at night. And you get to meet all their department heads and go through everything that they know, hopefully, and meet Gary and have a keynote from him and those type of things as well. So I'm going to be chronicling that journey on Snapchat, obviously, and hopefully I'm going to walk out of there with some insights that I can use to apply and transition over to you guys as well, as far as what I've learned. And so next week's Make It Happen Monday is going to be all focused on what I learned, hopefully, what I learned from Gary V and the team over at VaynerMedia on Friday. I'll be coming in off a red eye, though, at 5:30 in the morning, so it's going to be an interesting day. And I need more than a few Red Bulls to make sure I get through that. So anyways, but as always, thanks for your questions. Thanks for sharing. If there are topics that you want me to talk about, please hit me up on Snapchat, on email, on Facebook. Hit me up on this link. When this thing goes out, we get a ton of engagement after the fact. So I'm going to start playing around with different times for Make It Happen Mondays, because 12:30, seems like a decent amount of people join, but it's not necessarily like a, thousands of people or anything like that. Not that I'm expecting it. But I really do genuinely appreciate those of you who are following me and sharing out that content that I'm putting out there, because I'm just trying to do my thing too. Like, I hope one of the things that comes across with what I do is that I'm not a trainer. I'm a sales guy that just came across some decent stuff, and I'm selling every day. So I'm learning new stuff every day. I learn from you guys when I listen to you, and you guys follow me and share stuff. So please keep sharing, please keep asking questions, and make it a great day. All right. Let's all make it happen today. Make somebody smile too, right? Like I said, be appreciative for what you got. It's, I don't think enough of us stop and really, really put things into perspective of how good we got it. All right. So make somebody smile today. Make it happen. Thanks.